Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the John Campea Show here on my YouTube channel. I am, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an honor and a privilege, as it is every day, to have you guys joining me here, particularly on the start of a brand new week. It is Monday, and I am so glad you guys decided to join me here to talk about all our favorite things, movies and television shows, and all the things we love and hate and agree on and disagree on and all that kind of stuff. I'm glad you're here being a film fan with me. Listen, guys, here's how today's show is going to go. We're going to start off the show with 5 topics that you guys have emailed into me. Now, how do you get a topic or a question on the John Campea Show? It's simple. You just email me anytime at john@thejohncampeashow.com. That's john at thejohncampeashow.com. Send on in your email. Make sure you put the word topic in the subject line, or else it's not going to go into my correct inbox and I won't see your question. And of course, as always, keep those emails to 90 words or less, or else I'm not even going to bother reading it because I wouldn't be able to put it on the screen even if I wanted to. So, with all of that out of the way, let's not waste any time. Let's dive right into it with the first topic of the day. And the first topic today comes to us from Bryan K. And Bryan K writes, "Hi, John. What do you think? Is that what you mean? This is the movie deal of the decade. What do you think is the movie deal of the decade? Disney buys Lucasfilm, or Disney buys Fox? Or is there a big deal gone down that I've forgotten about or coming up?" Thanks a lot for the question. Of course, with the big deal just being done, again, just to clarify, Disney did not buy Fox. They bought a whole ton of their assets. But still, for argument's sake, let's just refer to it as them buying Fox. So what's the bigger deal? What makes the bigger splash? What has the longer and larger and wider implications? The deal that Disney made to buy Lucasfilm, hence getting themselves Star Wars, or them buying Fox? There's a couple of ways to answer that question, but really it comes down to one thing. Let's start by looking at it from a certain point of view. From a certain point of view, you could say the Disney deal to buy Lucasfilm, because out of all the individual IPs, out of all the individual properties, there's nothing in either of these deals that comes close to the value of Star Wars, obviously. So Star Wars is clearly the most valuable IP amongst any of the deals, sure. However, if you're just going to sit back and say, overall, what was the bigger deal? The Lucasfilm deal or the Fox deal? Clearly, it's the Fox deal. The Fox deal, first of all, if you just want to look in terms of numbers, the Lucasfilm deal costs $4 billion. This one costs $66 billion when it's all said and done. But on top of that, the Fox deal, while there's no one individual property that's nearly as valuable as Star Wars in and of itself, you still have to take all of it into consideration. And the sheer volume of intellectual properties and franchises and all that stuff, television shows that Disney gets their hands on now, far outweighs just one single IP being Star Wars, even if Star Wars is by far the biggest of them all. Especially when you take into consideration the fact that Disney made this deal primarily to acquire content to put on their streaming service. That was their main goal. And in that light, I really don't think there's any question that Fox is the bigger deal. Yes, Star Wars is the biggest individual property out of all the deals, but overall, there is just no doubt, no question that the far more reaching, the deal with the bigger ramifications and implications is the Disney deal to buy the Fox assets. To me, it's just no question. Thanks a lot for the question, man. And if you guys have any other points of view on that maybe I'm not considering, jump it into the comment section and leave it there. I'd love to hear your thoughts. All right, let's move on to the next topic. Speaking of the Disney and Fox deal, the next topic comes to us from one of my Patreon supporters, Ali Hussein, who writes, "Hey, John, love your show." Thank you so much, Ali. My question is, are Disney going to continue shows like Legion and The Gifted? Both are based on the X-Men universe. Love to hear your thoughts. And like as we were just talking about, the main reason that Disney wanted to get Fox wasn't for the X-Men, and it wasn't for Fantastic Four, and it wasn't for Deadpool. Those are nice side bonuses that they get. The main driving force that Bob Iger confirmed was their motivation for buying all these assets from Fox was to acquire a whole ton of IP for their streaming service. Now, every show, every unique individual show has its own set of complications and rights and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know the intricate details of shows like Legion or The Gifted. But if on face value, we want to just take that Gifted belonged to Fox and Legion belonged to Fox, since they're both based on X-Men properties, they should be anyway. But Will Disney continue on with those shows? Well, again, if Disney's whole point was to acquire programming for their streaming service, it would stand to reason that I think two of their best, not the two best, but two of their best. Legion's fantastic. Legion is still funny to me because I hated the premiere episode. I hated the pilot. Hated it, hated it, hated it. So much so, I just ditched the show. And that was because of you guys telling me for months, John, you really got to get back on this show. It gets really good, blah, blah, blah. Finally, I listened to you guys. I got back on the show. And then I binged all the rest of it because I just fell in love with the rest of the show. And then there's Legion, which I'm really enjoying as well. If Disney's primary purpose and motivation for buying all these assets from Fox was to get content to put on their streaming service, it would seem counterproductive to not move forward with Legion, to not move forward with The Gifted, to not move forward with a lot of the other stuff that they have on there. Lucifer is another one that comes to mind. I love that show. It's probably my favorite show on Fox is Lucifer. Anyway, so yeah, I believe, who knows what's going to happen? We don't know the intricate details of all the individual shows' deals, but to me, it seems pretty straightforward that Disney would indeed move forward with shows like Legion and The Gifted and probably have them go onto their streaming service in 2019 once that thing gets up and running. But maybe you guys know some information that I'm not aware of. If so, drop some links down in the comment section below so everybody else can see what you're talking about. All right, let's move on now to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from Anat Segal, who writes, last week, Peter Jackson announced the trailer for the new movie he produced, The Mortal Engines, will debut with The Last Jedi. However, I haven't seen anybody talk about it or even seen it online. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The new movie, Mortal Engines, that Peter Jackson is behind. As a matter of fact, that trailer, the Mortal Engines trailer, did play in front of Star Wars The Last Jedi. I mean, at least it did in my theater that I saw it with. So it did play. And this morning, this is very unusual. Normally, they debut a trailer online before it plays in theaters. That's the normal way of doing things now. But they actually dropped the Mortal Engines trailer in front of The Last Jedi and didn't put the trailer online until this morning. Because this morning I got my note from the publicist saying, Mortal Engines trailer now online. And I'm like, it wasn't online? Like, it played in front of The Last Jedi? Like, that is so reverse of how they normally do things now. Normally, when they're going to put a trailer in front of a movie, normally they'll drop that trailer online 2 or 3 or 4 days or maybe even a week before it plays in front of that movie and then move ahead. This is one of those rare circumstances where it actually played in front of the movie first, and then a couple of days later, they drop it online. So it has dropped online. For those of you who don't know anything about Mortal Engines, it's a very cool concept. So basically, it's a dystopian future like a lot of these stories are. After something called like the 60-minute war. And what happens is now you got these big megapolises, these cities that move. They travel on wheels. Howl's Moving Castle? Something like that, I guess. But so you got London, right? Is on this giant, it's just a giant moving city, and they go around devour other smaller cities for their own resources and things like that. So that's kind of like the underpinning of the story. And the trailer, it's not a great trailer because remember, it's just a teaser. It's just the first tease. It's what I refer to as an announcement trailer, like announcing to the world, this movie's coming. But visually, it looked great. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen the trailer yet. It is available on YouTube now if you want to look it up. But that one shot of the camera going over the moving city of London, you see the parks and everything like that, I thought that looked incredible. Like, I thought it looked really good. Overall, as a trailer, meh, it's a trailer, but visually it was fantastic. And as just an announcement trailer, I certainly think it did its job. As an announcement trailer, I think it did its job. So if you haven't seen that yet, you should go check that out. All right, let's move on now to the next topic. And the next topic today comes to us from our viewer, Nate P. And Nate P writes, films are subjective and people are allowed to dislike a film. I find it pathetic, however, people may be going to such lengths to artificially sabotage audience scores on Rotten Tomatoes. I'll elaborate, citing a Facebook user group who claimed responsibility for influencing the low audience score via use of bot accounts. The user group claims to be pro the old Star Wars EU and DCEU. It is considering targeting Avengers Infinity War as well. All right, so for those of you who don't know what he's talking about, there have been a couple of groups, one in particular, and this story is going around, that is claiming responsibility for generating a bunch of artificial bots to basically go and register false votes against Star Wars The Last Jedi on the Rotten Tomatoes meter. Now, following up on that, the movie website Bleeding Cool, they looked into it a little bit, and this is what Bleeding Cool then reported on that. They wrote, on diving into a comparison between the rate of reviews on other current releases and recent blockbusters, we noted a few abnormalities, many of which are by the newly created accounts, which did a low score for Jedi, then immediately turning around and doing a Thor review. Comparing that user behavior with other film releases, something feels atypical to say the least. If it's a coordinated campaign or a bot farm, however, remains to be seen. So basically, here's what's happening. There is a group of people claiming that they generated a bot system to go create fake accounts on fake brand new accounts on Rotten Tomatoes so they can register low votes for The Last Jedi. They're saying their motivation for this is because this is the same group that was, complained a lot when The Force Awakens came out, because they say the old Star Wars books that are no longer canon, they're pissed off that those things aren't considered canon anymore and that they're going to attack the Lucasfilm stuff and all this kind of stuff. So then a couple of sites, one of which, the most notable of which being Bleeding Cool, saying they go and research it a little bit. You say there are a whole bunch of new accounts that created specifically for that, registered fake votes for The Last Jedi and moved on. So this brings up a couple of questions. Question number one, is it real? Question number two, if it is real, does it really matter? And here's why I think about it. Number one, for me personally, I think anybody can claim anything online. I mean, I could claim that I did a system attack on Rotten Tomatoes to just make it look like people didn't like, what was that recent Adam Sandler movie with Pac-Man? Game Over? I can't even remember the name of the movie. It was so bad. But I can claim that. I can say that I did that. Okay, but that doesn't mean I did it. And I think we have to take into account here, there's a possibility here that this is just some lonely loser on Facebook who decided he wanted some attention, and he's done this before, to say something like this just to get attention, and he didn't really actually do anything. I think that is a very strong possibility that we have to keep in mind. And really, if I had to put $5 down on something, I'm betting that's the case. Now, on the other side of it, one of the big conundrums going on here is like, wait a minute. We've got three significant audience rating score things, of which there's only one legitimate one, and that's Cinema Score. I've been saying that forever. But you've got IMDb's audience rating score, you got Rotten Tomatoes audience rating score, you got Cinema Score, which is the only legitimate one, but whatever. How come we have two of those audience scores that rank relatively high? The IMDb one, the last I checked, was at 82%, and the Cinema Score, which is the legitimate one, got an audience rating of an A. Okay, so how come there's two that are really lean positive, and then all of a sudden there's this one down here that says like 56% or something like that? Why is there such a disparity there between the IMDb user ratings, the Cinema Score user ratings, and the Rotten Tomatoes? Why is there such a wide gap between those three audience rating systems? Why is it so different between them? If this whole coordinated bot attack thing is true, that would explain that. That would explain why the others' audience rating scores are so high, and yet the Rotten Tomatoes one is low. If this bot attack was real, if it was real, that would explain that. It would give us a rational explanation as to why these ones are high and this one is low. Because they're not claiming they bot attacked the IMDb. They're not claiming there is no way to bot attack Cinema Score because it's done manually with paper and pen. So it would explain that. However, that being said, is this actually true? I don't think it is. But even if it is true, even if this guy did put together some system to have bots that basically generated false accounts just so it could downvote The Last Jedi, even if that's true, there's no telling how many of those bot things happened. How many fake votes were registered? Was it 80% of them? Was it 5% of them? Was it 1% of them? So I think we need to be really dubious about any claims about a bot attack on the Rotten Tomatoes audience score. Again, it would explain the difference, because so far I've seen nobody else offer any legitimate explanation between why these other two audience scores are relatively high and one is relatively low. I haven't seen any explanation for that. This would explain that. However, I think the smart money says that this didn't really happen. Even though there are people claiming responsibility, probably not true. I think probably just somebody looking for attention. Secondly, even if it is true, and they did do it, we have no way of telling how much did it influence the score. Did it influence the score 50%? Did it influence the score 3%? So there's no real way to do that. So at the end of the day, I think the way we have to approach this whole bot fake vote thing on whatever is just probably not to think about it at all. Just accept, hey, this one is a good audience score, that one's a good audience score, this is a bad audience score. Okay, there it is. And just accept it as it is and move forward. However, I will say this though. The fact that a story like this even exists once again highlights what I have been saying for months. The IMDb audience rate score, it gives The Last Jedi an 80-some%. Yay, great. I don't care. It shouldn't count. Because once again, the IMDb rating score and the Rotten Tomato audience score can be voted on by people who have never seen the movie, can possibly have bot attacks against them, and allow people to vote multiple times if they know how to do it. For that reason, I don't care if IMDb says it's a high rating. I still don't think you should look at it. I still think the only legitimate one is CinemaScore. I still believe that. And I think the fact that this story even exists points us to the fact that there's no way to rely on either the IMDb score or the RT score. I just don't think there's any way we can rely on those. And the fact that a story like this exists only highlights that even more. And once again, just to highlight this whole story about a hacker using bots to artificially drive down the score on the Rotten Tomatoes audience rating, I don't believe it. And I don't think you should either. Unless you have some other information that I'm missing that support your theory that it's true, that's fine if you do. But I just don't think we should believe it, honestly, off the top of my head. Look, a lot of people love this movie. There's a bunch of people who don't love the movie. And that's okay. Anyway, let's move on. The next and final emailed in topic today comes to us from Josh DeRose, who writes, with Ian McKellen joining Amazon's The Lord of the Rings cast, do you think we might see other notables from the past in the cast and crew? All right, thanks a lot for the question, man. Now, first of all, Josh, I need to correct you on something. The way you worded that, let me just bring that up again. With Ian McKellen joining Amazon's Lord of the Rings, Ian McKellen has not joined the upcoming Lord of the Rings show on Amazon. And for those of you who didn't know, Amazon, we talked about this a few weeks ago, Amazon has won the rights. They are going to be producing a Middle-earth TV series that, if I remember the quote correctly, suggests that it's going to be something of a prequel to, pardon me, There and Back Again. Or not There and Back Again, Fellowship of the Ring. It's going to be a prequel to Fellowship of the Ring of sorts. What that means exactly, I'm not really sure. I don't know what that means exactly. But they are making a new show. It is happening. It's greenlit. It's moving forward. Everything's happening. But Ian McKellen did not announce that he was in the show. But what did happen is that reports came out, and this is 100% true, is that Ian McKellen is saying he would like to play Gandalf again in the new series. That's what's being said. But that is different from Ian McKellen has joined the show. No. Ian McKellen says he'd like to do it. Here's his quote exactly. He was being asked initially by the interviewer about, how do you feel about somebody else playing Gandalf now? And Ian McKellen, the great Ian McKellen, he followed up and answered with this. What do you mean another Gandalf? The 78-year-old actor said, feigning indignation. I haven't said yes because I haven't been asked. But are you suggesting someone else is going to play it? Gandalf is 7,000 years old, so I am not too old for it. I love Ian McKellen, man. I love him. Look, so has he signed up to join it? No. We don't even know if the Amazon series is going to have a Gandalf character. Like, at this point, we just don't know. Could he be there? Yes, he's going to be alive during that time. So could Gandalf be in there? Absolutely he could. But we don't know if that's where the focus of their show is going to be, and if they're going to have Gandalf. I will say this, though. You know me. I'm like, just because an actor says he wants to be in a movie doesn't mean you should put that actor in a movie. Absolutely. But if Ian McKellen says, I would love to be Gandalf again, and you're going to have Gandalf in your show, I can't think of many legitimate reasons why you wouldn't let Ian McKellen, one of the greatest directors of our age, who is known to be Gandalf and knocked it out of the park as Gandalf, and to an entire multiple generations of people now, when they think Gandalf, he's the guy. I cannot think of many legitimate reasons why you would not let Ian McKellen come back to play Gandalf again. The only thing I could think of, that if I was a producer of this new show, the only thing I could think of that would be a legitimate reason why I wouldn't want Ian McKellen back is if I want to make sure nobody, even though this is Middle-earth, this isn't the movies. This is a new telling of this story separate from the movies. This show shouldn't be seen as a prequel to the movie. It should be seen as a prequel to the story in the book, but this is a whole new incarnation of this world. If they were concerned about that, yeah, then maybe you don't get Ian McKellen, because it would obviously create a connection between the audience that, oh, this world is the same as that world, just in a different time. And if you're trying to say, no, this is a brand new incarnation of this world, this is a whole new, brand new telling of this story of Middle-earth that J.R.R. Tolkien gave us, then at that point, maybe you don't want Ian McKellen back. But otherwise, if Ian McKellen wants in, you let Ian McKellen in. I mean, if Ian McKellen wants to be the new Wolverine, let Ian McKellen be the new Wolverine. I mean, if Ian McKellen wants in, you let him in. But I don't know. What do you guys thought? Do you think if Ian McKellen wants back in, and if they have a Gandalf character, would you go, no, this is a new series, we need a new actor, fair enough? Or would you go, duh, it's Ian McKellen, he is Gandalf, you'll let him be Gandalf? I'm curious to know what you guys think. Make sure you jump into the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. Okay, with that stuff out of the way now, it is time for your live comments. I'm going to spend the rest of the show now taking your live comments. Two ways to get live comments on. Number one, use the super chat. I know a whole bunch of you already have. Secondly is, if there is still time near the end of the show, and there hasn't been lately, but if there is, I will then go to Twitter as well. Now, before we get to that, though, it is that time of the show for me to do my 1-minute commercial break, to do my admittedly shameless plug for the thing that pays the bills around here, which are my Patreon supporters. So here, check out this 1-minute spot, and we'll be right back. For those of you who have followed me for any period of time, you guys know that I made the decision recently to leave the corporate overlords. I no longer wanted to work for corporations. I wanted to be an independent content creator. And the only way I've been able to do that is by the support of my Patreon supporters. So what I would like to do is to ask you guys who watch my shows, who spend any amount of time with me every single month, to consider going over to www.patreon.com/John Campea. There you'll get all the information about what exactly does it mean to be a Patreon supporter of mine. What does being a Patreon supporter do for helping to make sure that shows like this one and all the other shows I do here on my channel can actually be produced? And on top of that, what benefits are there to being a Patreon supporter? And maybe if you guys can check that out, if you decide you want to be one of my Patreon supporters, that would be awesome. And if you don't, that's perfectly fine too. I'm just happy that you guys have decided to be here today and be a fellow movie fan and join us in the conversation. So go and check out the website. All right, guys, a special thing. I think I ended that a little too soon, whatever. A special thank you to all of you guys who are already Patreon supporters of my page. Thank you so much. You guys are the reason this show is even able to exist. And just a couple of the benefits of it. Number one, we have audio-only podcasts. A lot of people ask for that, but we make audio-only podcasts of the John Campea Show, Star Wars Talk Tuesdays, The Weekly Hero, available to our Patreon supporters. We also have a Facebook group. Don't forget, those of you who are Patreon supporters, we do have the John Campea After Show about 10 minutes after this show ends on our Facebook page. So anyway, check out the page, see if it's for you. If it is, great, and if it's not, no worries. I'm just glad you're here being a film fan with me. All right, with all that out of the way, let's jump over to the live questions that you guys have sent in, and we start off with this one. This one comes to us from ESP Inzoe1123 writes, am I the only one that thought Rey and Kylo may have been twins while they were connecting to the Force? Later in the throne room, obviously it showed, but for a bit, I felt they were. Love what you do. Well, look, I think there were a lot of people out there before this movie hit theaters that were convinced that Kylo and Rey were actually siblings. I mean, there were a bunch of people that thought they would become a love interest. A lot of people thought they were siblings. A lot of people thought that they were cousins. A lot of people thought that she was Skywalker's daughter and that he was, Leia's daughter. So a lot of people thought they were cousins. There were a whole bunch of theories going around. And I don't think you're crazy to think, other than the age difference, because one is supposed to be a little bit older than the other. I think Kylo's supposed to be a bit older than Rey. But other than that, I don't think it's crazy that you thought at first that maybe there's a possibility they're twins. Maybe Han and Leia had two kids. Maybe they had twins. And one had to be given away for some reason. Who knows, whatever. But it's not a crazy theory. Obviously, we know now that theory is not true. But it wasn't crazy of you to suspect that at first. Not at all. All right, we move on now to the next question. And the next question comes to us from Antonio de Grandis, who writes, hey, John, I'm looking forward to The Greatest Show, and me too, man. I cannot wait to watch this movie. It comes out this Wednesday, but there are no reviews for this film yet. Should I be worried? Here's the thing. I know there were press screenings for it, because there were press screenings last week, and I couldn't make it. So I know there was a press screening. If the movie opens on Wednesday, I have no idea when the review embargo is. I just don't know, because I didn't go to the screening. I have no idea when the review embargo is. If the reviews start dropping today, then there's no reason to be worried, unless the reviews are terrible. But if today comes and goes, and there's no review, yeah, that's a bad sign. It doesn't matter how much I'm looking forward to this movie, that is a bad sign. It doesn't guarantee that something's bad or something's wrong with the movie. No. But is it a good sign or a bad sign if we get to like 30 hours, maybe 34 hours before the movie opens in theaters and we still have not gotten the reviews online? The studio is still not allowed the review embargo to drop? Again, I don't care if this is a movie I'm dying to see. That's a bad sign. I said that with Justice League. I'll say it with Greatest Showman. It is not a good sign. Studios hiding reviews is never a good sign. It's never a good sign. Full 48 hours before it comes out, that's fine. I mean, if the reviews drop today, then it's fine. But if they hold off reviews till tomorrow, really making it last minute, I'd be nervous. I am nervous. I'm already feeling nervous about that, because I want this movie to be so good, because I think the trailers are spectacular. The soundtrack is amazing. I've been listening to this soundtrack for days, weeks now. I love it. I cannot wait to see this movie. I want it to be good so bad. All right, let's move on here. And this one comes to us from Shelby Grigo, who writes, the backlash against The Last Jedi. Come on. I think it's obvious these three films were to introduce new characters. Then each film was to say goodbye to a member of the original in each film. Well, I don't think your theory is all that wrong. I mean, look, I think we heard shortly after The Force Awakens that we heard kind of spill out that The Force Awakens, the first episode of this new trilogy, was to focus more on Han, which it did, and then we said goodbye to Han. The second one was supposed to focus more on Luke, and it did, and then we, spoiler warning, everybody, spoiler warning, and then we found out Luke was gone. You've probably seen that spoiler everywhere now. And the third one was meant to focus on Leia. How are they going to do that now? It is the one thing that gives me hope. I mentioned this on the Last Jedi spoiler review. It is the one thing that really gives me hope that maybe they will come to their senses and recast Leia. I know you've heard me say this before, but let me make the case again. To not recast Leia, to not pick up the ball for Carrie Fisher, who cannot carry it herself anymore, to refuse to pick up this ball and carry this character across the finish line when Carrie Fisher has spent the better part of her life portraying and being Princess Leia to us, and brought her this far, the character this far. To not take that across the finish line now with episode 9, I believe is a spit in the face to the legacy of Carrie Fisher. I believe it is the utmost of disrespect to the memory of Carrie Fisher. Say, Carrie's gone? Oh, okay, then let's forget the Princess Leia character then. Screw that. The only way to pay homage and respect to Carrie Fisher and to honor and respect what she did with this character is to not say, oh, she got so close to the finish line with Leia. We were almost at episode 9, which is going to be Leia's finish line. Almost there. Oh, well, let's just throw the character away now. That is a spit in the face to everything and all the hard work, especially when you realize, when you read up on how much work Carrie Fisher had to do to get her back just physically into shape to come back and be Princess Leia. All the work, blood, sweat, and tears, dedication, and passion she has given this character over 40 years, and for us to not carry it across the finish line for her is fucking ridiculous. Ridiculous. Absolutely disrespectful and ridiculous. The only way to honor Carrie Fisher here is to recast the role and do it in Carrie's name and to take Leia across the finish line. Anything else is a spit in the face to the legacy of Carrie Fisher and everything she did for this character. I'm sorry, I get a little worked up about this, but anything short of that is complete disrespect. Complete disrespect. And I really hope, you weren't even asking about that. I just went off at a tangent, I'm sorry, and I get upset about it, but I really hope they recast. I don't know that they're going to do that. And look, whatever they do, I'm not going to be mad because I know their motivation is to honor Carrie. If they decide not to recast it, even though I think they're 100% wrong, I know their heart is in a place that they're doing it because they think this is the best way to honor Carrie. And I'm not mad. I have no problem with my fellow Star Wars fans who don't want them to recast Carrie, because I know your hearts are in a place that you want to honor Carrie. You just happen to think that the best way to honor Carrie is to end the Leia character now and not recast her going into the thing. So on that level, I know your heart's in the right place. I get it. But I 100% think you're wrong. I 100% think you're wrong. And if Carrie Fisher were here, she'd be swearing a blue streak at us if we even suggested not finishing off the Leia character. If we even suggested not taking the Leia through to her finish in episode 9, she would swear a blue streak at us. Anyway, that's just how I feel about that. Obviously, I get a little worked up about that issue. Okay, let's move on to the next topic. And by the way, guys, if you have not sent in a super chat yet, please do not. I mean, we still got like 25 minutes, but the super chat is already kind of filled up. So please, if you have not sent in a super chat, do not send one in anymore. Okay, save one till tomorrow. All right, Tony Bush writes, would love for Rey to go back to the island and collect Luke's robe. Yoda burned a tree, so can a ghost fight? Vader could sense Obi-Wan, but Kylo was fooled. Well, there's a whole lot you're putting in there, Tony. I don't think she can go back and get his robe, because if I remember the scene correctly, when he disappears, the robe literally blows away in the wind out into the ocean. So I don't think there's any getting that. But yeah, Yoda showed us that a Force ghost can have power in the physical world. That's interesting. I mean, because remember, Obi-Wan said to Vader, if you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine. Is more powerful than you can possibly imagine just show up as a ghost and say hi? Is that more powerful than you can possibly imagine? Or was Yoda showing us a little glimpse into what that kind of power can be? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. Let's see. This one comes to us from Luis Garza 1000, who writes, quick thoughts on Pan's Labyrinth. Oh, I love Pan's Labyrinth. It's dark and moving and emotional, and the characters are deep, and it's rich fantasy all at the same time. If you guys have not seen Guillermo del Toro's film Pan's Labyrinth, by all means, many people consider it his crown jewel. I actually like The Shape of Water even more. I like The Shape of Water even more than Pan's Labyrinth, but Pan's Labyrinth, a lot of people consider that to be the crown jewel of Guillermo del Toro's films. If you have not seen it, make sure you go and check that out. All right, let's move on here. Jordan Cruz writes, without spoilers, I feel Star Wars Last Jedi got rid of a lot of the stuff set up in The Force Awakens. If JJ wasn't directing 9, I would think Disney didn't like The Force Awakens. Thoughts? I disagree. I think they follow through. And again, look, we've been mentioning spoilers here on the show. So, I mean, we are now, if most people who really want to see Star Wars have seen it in the first 4 days. So I apologize if you have not, my deepest apologies, but I'm going on the assumption that most of us have seen it now, and we're just talking about the film kind of openly on that regard. And if you haven't, you don't want to hear any more, please, by all means, tune out at this point. But I disagree. I don't think he did. I don't think he disregarded anything. A lot of people say, like, there are still people who are very upset that Rey did not end up being somebody. But I have told you guys from the beginning, after Force Awakens, I told you guys, this movie clearly tells us that Rey's parents are nobody important. It certainly tells us that her lineage is not Skywalker. I think the movie The Force Awakens made it so bloody obvious and clear that Luke was not her father, despite the fact that everybody tried to make up this scenario that he was. And I even made a video about it. I said, look, let's go through line by line of The Force Awakens that clearly tell us that Luke is not her father. And I went through this I did a whole video on it. People still wouldn't believe me. And then here we go. I've been arguing for months that Snoke is probably not anybody of note that we need to know about. And I remember about a month ago, I even said on Star Wars Talk Tuesday, I said, you know what? I'm not going to be surprised at all if we don't find out anything about Snoke's background. Why? We didn't know anything about the Emperor. When we watched the first trilogy, the original trilogy, they never told us anything about the Emperor. All we needed to know was he's bad, he's powerful, and he's the Emperor. That's all we needed to know. I felt the same way about Snoke. People wanted to know more. Fine, there are going to be novels that come. That's fine. Novels will come. But I've been saying that forever. I do not believe at all that The Last Jedi threw anything away from The Force Awakens. If anything, it followed everything from The Force Awakens through to their logical conclusions. But that's just my point of view. You may have a different one. Let's see. Siobhan Dixon writes, morning, John. Although it's midnight where I live, I still watch all your shows live. Question. Keep one, retire one, erase one. Nolan, Tarantino, Fincher. The one I'll retire is Tarantino because he says he wants to retire soon anyway. And the keep, I'll keep Nolan because he's still just beginning his career. And erase one, Fincher. I mean, look, I want all these guys, obviously, but if you're going to make me choose between those three, that's how I'll put out my shot on that. Thanks a lot. Med8614 just put in a super chat. Thank you so much. Med8614 or 6814, thank you so much. Dave Higgs writes, hey, John, thank you for always putting on a great show. My pleasure. Thank you for saying that. Do you think Meryl Streep would make a good Leia going forward? Keep bringing the filthy. Yeah, I mean, look. When it comes to who do you cast as Leia, just get a great actress, that's fine. I would love it for be like a Meryl Streep type, who is the greatest, probably greatest actress of all time. So, I mean, just on that level, I think it would be great to have her come in and say this performance is dedicated to Carrie Fisher and we're going to finish off her Princess Leia character. I'd be all for it. I mean, but don't get me wrong. I'm not one of these guys like the only person could possibly be Meryl Streep. No. There's 100 actresses out there that are super uber talented that I'm sure would do a great job. But if they did announce that it was Meryl Streep, I'd be bouncing off the walls. I'd be super excited. Curtis Lopez writes, have you ever watched the Nostalgia Critic? Yeah, I watched a few of his things. Like, I'll admit, I haven't watched a lot of his stuff. But I remember my favorite thing that he did, Nostalgia Critic did, was he did this one video, because it was basically, he was right on the same page as me. It was right after Mad Max Fury Road came out. And he liked it. He liked it. He thought it was a good movie. But, you know, he didn't love it, like it's the best top 5 films of the year, sort of thing, right? But he liked it, and he gave it a positive review, and he got a whole bunch of crap. And I was the same way. I liked Mad Max Fury Road. I liked it a lot, but I wasn't putting it in my top 5 films of the year. I just thought there were a couple of weaknesses of the film that disqualified it from being top 5, for me personally. But still, I gave it a big thumbs up. I gave it a big positive review. I really enjoyed it. But that wasn't enough for some people. He said, you liked it, but you didn't like it enough. And then he took a whole bunch of shit, and I took a whole bunch of shit as well. So he made a video about that. And it's one of my, I thought, very insightful, very well handled. It's one of my favorite videos that he's done. But admittedly, though, I haven't watched a lot of videos of his. But that is one that I thought was very, very good. Let's see. Chris Martin wrote, most anticipated movie of 2018. It's going to be Infinity War. But John, a Han Solo movie's coming out. I know. And if it was Star Wars Episode 9, I would say Star Wars Episode 9. but I'm going to admit I am more looking forward to Infinity War than I am the Han Solo movie. Don't get me wrong, I'm looking forward to the Han Solo movie, I am. But I don't even know that Han Solo would be in my top 3 most anticipated movies of the year. So my most anticipated movie of the year as of right now is Infinity War. Jacinthan Sasinthan writes, I just want to thank you for answering my questions, and I just want to tell you how much I respect you for the hard work you put in. Also, thank you for not judging me for my bad grammar. English is not my first language. I can't understand a thing you just said. Learn English. No, I'm just kidding. No, thank you so much for writing it, and I appreciate that you do that. And you know what? If English ain't your first language, guess what? Your English is way better than my Italian. So how would I judge you at all? If anything, the fact that you can even coherently speak in 2 different languages makes you 10 times smarter than me. So no apologies necessary. All right, next one comes to us from Curtis Lopez, who writes, what restaurant from a movie/TV show do you wish existed? What restaurant from a movie or TV show do I wish existed? Well, on one hand, I could say I love Parks and Rec. And Leslie Knope has her favorite place to go to get waffles, right? But that restaurant is actually right up the road from my house. It's literally the place they use to shoot those scenes in is literally right up the road from where I live here. It's like literally less than a 5-minute drive from here, just straight up Olive Avenue, and you're there. But that's one. I mean, then of course there's the restaurant from Seinfeld, but that's a real place too. I'd be able to visit it if I wanted to. But as far as fictional ones go, I don't know, maybe Ratatouille's. Maybe Ratatouille's restaurant. Maybe that's the one I would want in real life. I'd have to think about it, but that's the one I'll go with. Thanks a lot for the question, Curtis. Next one comes to us from Chris Warden, who writes, hey, John, have you seen the 1994 film Street Fighter II, the animated movie? It's on my top 5 of anime and video game movies. Yeah, I did see it, and I watched it one day when I didn't have a whole ton of a lot to do, and I watched it, and it's fun but I'll be honest with you, though, it doesn't rank high like that for me. Don't get me wrong, I got a kick watching it, and I did, and I'm glad you loved it so much, and you rank it so high. That's awesome. Not me. I wouldn't rank it up there myself, but I'm glad that you did. Thanks a lot for the question, man. Rafael Cervantes writes, love the show, John. Thank you so much. Excited to see that we're another step closer to that MCU, X-Men, Star Trek, and Star Wars crossover, per Patton Oswalt on Parks and Rec. Yeah, I was just mentioning Parks and Rec. And if you guys haven't seen it, by the way, I'm sure most of you guys have, but Patton Oswalt was on Parks and Rec. He had a character. He recurred there a couple of times. And he was doing this filibuster by giving out his synopsis for the ultimate MCU Star Wars crossover film. And he just wung it. He just winged it off the top of his head. And he goes on for like, I can't even remember if it was like 10 minutes or something like that. And it's this description of the ultimate MCU and Star Wars crossover film. And it is legendary. And it is awesome. And here's the thing. When Ann and I were I've never had a chance to meet Patton. And I really enjoy his work a lot. And I think he's a hilarious individual. And when Ann and I were at the after party for the Last Jedi premiere, we bump into Patton Oswalt, and he's standing right there in front of me. It's like, oh my God. And I wanted to talk to him, but he was already talking to somebody. And I could tell it was a very attractive girl. And so Ann and I kind of walk around him a little bit, and I realize, oh my God, I'm standing right here with Patton Oswalt, and he's sitting there talking to Tessa Thompson from Thor Ragnarok, Valkyrie from Thor Ragnarok. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm kind of geeking out here right now. We got Patton Oswalt and Valkyrie standing here talking to each other. It's like, okay, this is a conversation I am not going to interrupt. I am not going to interrupt this conversation. I'm sure I will bump into Patton another time. But if you have not seen that, absolutely check out that video. Look for it on YouTube. Patton Oswalt, Parks and Rec, Star Wars MCU crossover. If you put that whole jarbled thing into the YouTube search bar, I'm sure you'll find it. You will thank me that you did. All right. Thanks a lot for the question, man. And the next one comes to us from Stefan Gonzalez, who writes, hey, John, do you think or want Duel of the Fates to appear in a future Star Wars movie, Episode 9? It depends. Look, as much as I don't like the prequels, there are some things in the prequels that I very much do appreciate. The lightsaber fights I appreciate very much. The pod race scene I think is great. I know a lot of people didn't like the pod race. I love the pod race, whatever. But by far the greatest thing to come out of the prequels was John Williams' Duel of the Fates. It is got to be in the top 3 of my all-time favorite pieces of music from Star Wars. It's fantastic. So look, if they found the right point to drop that piece of music in, then I'm fine with it. Unfortunately, it was either I think it was Attack of the Clones, that they came up with just a stupid point. Like, because remember, he's on his speeder bike and they start playing Duel of the Fates. You see Anakin standing there talking to a Jawa. Like, seriously, Anakin talking to a Jawa and you're playing Duel of the Fates. That made no sense thematically. But would I be up for it? Yes, with a big asterisk. If there was a appropriate scene for that piece of music to be in. What I don't want to see is Rey and Poe having dinner or having breakfast and hearing as they're having coffee and blue milk, right? Like that would make no sense. That's pretty much what they did in the second film. But if they come up with a good way to use it, I'm all for it. Absolutely. All right. Next one comes to us from Green Monkey, who writes, "Afternoon, John. I'm a huge fan of Ready Player One, but I'm concerned with the movie. In the trailer, a lot of changes, like 2 characters meeting too soon. Any concerns from you?" Nope, none. It's Steven Spielberg, for heaven's sakes. And remember, look, I tell this to everybody who's got a favorite book coming to the movie. Just check your expectations right now, because you have to make changes. What works on the printed page in a book does not always work best on the big screen. And you got to adapt it and make some changes to make it work better and flow better as a 2-hour movie. Because I can't remember how long Ready Player One is as a book. But you know what? I'm just going to take a second here. Sorry, I know this is going to annoy a lot of you guys. I'm doing this right now. I'm going to type into my search bar, how many pages is Ready Player One? Okay, let's see what kind of answer it gives me. 385 pages. Okay, so 385 pages for Ready Player One. Screen time-wise, that's like 4 hours of screen time. The movie can't be that, so you have to adapt it. In screen, you got to get it down to about maybe 120-page screenplay, right? You got to take those 385 pages, get it down to 120, 30-page screenplay. Fine. So right there, you got to make changes. I would say to the fans of any book, check your don't expect to go in and just see a verbatim direct translation from the book to the screen, because number one, that'll make for a crappy movie. But number two, it's just not practical. So look, I think the trailers look spectacular. It's in the hands of the greatest filmmaker of all time, Steven Spielberg. I would say don't be worried at this point. That doesn't mean the movie's going to be good. Maybe it'll be bad. But I think we have good reason to be optimistic and hopeful. The trailers have looked sharp. The audience seems to be getting on board with it. And it's got Steven Spielberg at the helm. So I think it's okay to be optimistic at this point. All right, thanks a lot, Green Monkey. This next one comes to us from... where is it? Ismael Pava, who writes, "Could Disney produce a Firefly TV show after the deal with Fox is approved?" Well, we kind of addressed this the other day. Could they? Yes. But coulda and shoulda are two different things. I don't think they will, because there's not a big enough audience for it. There just isn't. John, you don't understand. There's armies of Firefly fans. I know it feels that way. But again, it's the same argument people were giving me about Power Rangers. When I try to tell people Power Rangers is not going to do well. And I ended up really liking the movie. But I tell people, and I would get every day, John, you don't understand how there are legions of people who love Power Rangers. This is going to be a $200 million opening. It's going to be $1 billion film. Woo! And what happened? It didn't. Firefly's in the same boat. And I remember Nathan Fillion talking about that. Even Nathan Fillion acknowledged before, like, it's just, they're a very passionate fan base for Firefly. I'm one of them. I think Serenity is one of the best sci-fi movies I've ever seen. I love Serenity. But the fan base just isn't there. There's not a big enough fan base to justify it. So while they could, and I will join you in the pub for a celebratory Diet Coke, because I don't drink beer, but I will join you in the pub for a celebratory drink. If they do announce it and they do it, I'll go, yes, because I'll be excited for it. I just don't. I think we got to be realistic and understand it's probably not going to happen. All right. Next one comes to us from Siobhan Dixit. What's your favorite Friends character and episode? Oh, gosh. And I was late to the party on Friends, but once I got on board with Friends, I realized, man, there's a reason this show is so pop culturally significant and why it's got so many fans. Probably my favorite character is the Matthew Perry one. What's Matthew Perry's character's name again? I can't remember, but he ends up with Courtney Cox. And I had a crush. Courtney Cox was my celebrity crush for like 20 years straight, okay? So there was that. I think he's probably my favorite one. Favorite episode is, I think, maybe the one where Ross and I cannot remember Jennifer Aniston's character's name, Rachel. Ross and Rachel made a sex tape and they watched it with everybody. That was so amazingly awkward. That was a good episode. Anyway, thanks a lot for the question. I've never had a Friends question before. Kalis Menon writes, Ben Barnes as the next James Bond. Liked him in The Punisher. Also, the Leia in space scene in The Last Jedi reminded me of the one scene of Star-Lord in space in Guardians of the Galaxy. Thoughts? Well, that's two questions. Ben Barnes as James Bond, sure, why not? He was great in Punisher. And I didn't even, it's like, I was watching the first few episodes of Punisher when his character was in there, and I'm like, why do I know this guy? Who is this guy? And I never connected that it was Ben Barnes. And then I looked it up as I was binging Punisher. I was like, holy crap, that's Ben Barnes. I thought he was great. Could he be a James Bond? Sure. Yeah, why not? He could. I mean, I added to the list of 100 guys who would make a great James Bond, but would he? Yes. Yeah, that scene also did remind me a little bit of the Star-Lord scene in Guardians of the Galaxy for sure. There's also, I was reminded on Twitter today by another viewer that in the Star Wars novel Lords of the Sith, there's a scene in one of the novels where Vader does pretty much the same thing that Leia did, which is actually kind of interesting. I had totally forgotten about that, and I love that book. But anyway, so that interesting observation, but an interesting comparison, I should say. Tony Bush writes, John Campea merchandise. All film is subjective. Oh, you're right. Once I get merchandise going, that is all film is subjective is absolutely one I've got to make. You're totally right, Tony. Absolutely right. All right, next one comes to us from Torn Makari, who writes, keep up the great work, John. I've become a big fan, and your videos have become a daily routine. Thank you so much. I mean, like, again, it really means a lot to me when you guys just take time out of your day just to send me a comment like that. And I appreciate that deeply. Thank you so much, man. Antonio De Grandis writes, over under 30%, the Rian Johnson trilogy is about Mandalorians. I'll take the under on that, but not by a ton. Like, I wouldn't say, like, if you put the over under at 5%, I would take the over. I'll take the under on 30%, but I still think it's a realistic possibility. Not probability, but I think that's a realistic possibility. People love the Mandalorians. And even Rebels has been getting more and more into the Mandalorian subculture and stuff like that. And people seem to be eating it up. So I think it's not unrealistic to think that maybe Rian Johnson's story does focus around Mandalore. It is totally possible. It's a good observation, Antonio. All right, next one comes to us from Entertainment Buddy, who writes, John, when you first said Affleck was done, I called you a DCEU hater. You're not alone, man. You are not alone. Now I realize you were saying this because you had info we didn't, so keep up the good work. Well, thank you so much, Entertainment Buddy. I really appreciate that. And it takes a big man to get on. I don't get a lot of apologies these days. Not a lot of apologies. No matter how many things turn out to be right, I don't get a lot of apologies. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. Curtis Lopez writes, I don't think the Disney service will get Lucifer because it's a WB-DC property. See, that's exactly what I was talking about, Curtis. Each one of these shows, you bring up a great point. Each one of these shows, as I was mentioning earlier, have their own unique sets of rights and contracts and what belongs where and who does what and blah, 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 blah. All that kind of stuff. So if Lucifer is a WB-DC property, hey, it's not a DCEU thing. So there still would exist a possibility that, you know, that the Disney streaming service would want to be the exhibitor for it. Warner Brothers could still have somebody else produce it and then they distribute it. That's still a possibility. It's not automatic because, as you're pointing out, every show has a unique set of complicated contracts and rights issues. But I believe it's still a possibility. I still think it is. My Opinions, what a great name for a great handle. My Opinions writes, hey, John, huge fan from Australia. Thank you so much. I probs consider you my best mate. Well, I'm honored. Thank you. Will Disney do anything further with the Alien and Predator films or just leave? You know what? we kind of brought this up the other day. I think the Alien thing has been running out of gas, and we saw that with Covenant. I liked Alien Covenant, but its box office took a nosedive. I think I think it's a franchise that's running out of gas. So I don't know if Disney would be keen on moving forward with it. And Predator, well, who knows? Let's see what Shane Black's Predator does. We're getting a new Predator movie from Shane Black. It's already shot. If it does real well, then maybe Disney will want to consider continuing that on. If not, maybe they'll just put it to bed. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. I think we're going to find out a lot when this movie comes out. When the movie comes out, that'll give us a better, clearer picture about what Disney might want to do with that property in the future. All right, this one comes to us from MED6814 writes, do you think Disney, etc., doing their own streaming service could affect the movies you own on Amazon, etc.? It wouldn't be far-fetched for them to do their own rent-to-own service. Well, that's fair and true. However, it works a little bit differently than that. Like once Amazon buys the rights to like rental and distribute that thing, that doesn't just go away. That's not like the rights of X-Men going to Fox. There's certain conditions and it's not in perpetuity and all this kind of stuff. I think in the business world here, where once we buy the right to sell this thing and we've sold it to our customer, you can't just pull it away. Worst case scenario I think would happen here is that Amazon, something like Amazon or Google Play, if they wanted to, would lose their right to sell it anymore, but they couldn't take away copies that people already bought. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen massively. So I don't think, plus, even if Disney does do its own rental, online service, you still want your product in every store possible. That's why you can buy every movie on iTunes, in Google Play Store, on Amazon Prime, and even if Disney launched its own thing to do something like that, you'd still want to put your product in every store possible. You want it on all the shelves so people can buy it. So I don't think that would affect that at all. So I think we're safe there. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure we're safe there. Let's see here. Next one comes to us from TJ Thomas, who writes, although you cannot see the main character, do you plan to see Ferdinand? Surprised by cinema score? I've actually heard it's all kinds of wonderful. I've been hearing that movie is great. Now, I'm not interested in it, so I bypassed the screenings for it, but I'm hearing fabulous things about it. So color me interested. I am now completely interested in this entire thing. So I'm going to wait and see about that. Mr. Manager writes, where did Mr. Manager go? Oh dear. Okay. A whole bunch more of these things just came in. Mr. Manager writes, completely unrelated to The Last Jedi, but how about that Infinity War trailer on the big screen? Oh, it was fabulous. Yeah, seeing that first of all, that Infinity War trailer just by itself is something spectacular. Seeing it on the big screen, though, was fantastic. That was great. It was, sometimes watching trailers on the big screen are a very different experience than watching a trailer on, your little computer monitor on your phone. This was one of those times. It was just a breathtaking. The audience went nuts. The audience that I was with went absolutely nuts when that trailer played, and I completely adored it. Okay, I got time for just a couple more. Ralph Rochier writes, hey John, Star Wars The Last Jedi, did you like Luke's wink to C-3PO? I did. I loved it. I thought it was great. I would have felt bad if there was no acknowledgement, especially considering the history between Luke and 3PO. It would have felt odd for them not to have some sort of even momentary connection. And him doing that, I thought was great. I ate it up. I liked it a lot. Thanks a lot, Ralph. Next one comes from Third Man 3, who writes, as time goes on, I feel like people will view The Force Awakens as a more cohesive and compelling story than The Last Jedi. The Last Jedi was just a garbled story with wow moments. Oh, I disagree with you completely, Third Man. I mean, and by the way, you're not the only one to feel that way. There are other people who feel that way. Absolutely. And all film is subjective. And if that's the way that it hit you, nothing wrong with that. That's great. I firmly disagree with you on that. I thought The Last Jedi was an incredibly cohesive story that followed through all the logic threads from The Force Awakens, followed all of them through to their logical conclusions. I just felt it was a far tighter movie than apparently you did. But again, that's the best thing about being film fans, man. You can have one opinion, I can have another, and it's all good. So I'm glad you liked The Force Awakens that much. I'm sorry you didn't like The Last Jedi all that much, but I do. And I think it was very cohesive and very tight. Other than the whole Finn and Rose side mission on that stupid casino planet. I did not like that at all. I did not like Benicio del Toro's character. I did not like what they did with Phasma. So even I have a lot of issues with the movie, but overall I thought it was very well packaged and put together. Samuel Varg writes, oh, nothing. He just put in a super chat. Well, thank you so much, Samuel. And the last thing is this, entertainment. And then, by the way, guys, I'm running out of time here. So all of you who still sent in questions, I will answer all your questions. I'll do a companion video to this one. I'll put it up on my channel later today, but I will answer every single one of those questions you guys sent in. But the last question I'll take on the show for now comes to us from Entertainment Buddy and says, John, is the reason you don't like Gal Gadot is because of the thing with you and Jamie Alexander? Oh, absolutely not. No. That's a huge misconception. There's this fake rumor going around out there that I wanted Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. No, I always thought she would have been good to play Wonder Woman, but you know me, I say this all the time. Any one of 100 talented actresses. The problem I had with the Gal Gadot casting is simply this. She's not a good actress. That's it. She's not a good actress, and every movie I've seen her in shows that. Now, just to clarify, I was worried she would ruin Wonder Woman, and she didn't. She was in the hands of a master director in Patty Jenkins who did a great job with her. Patty Jenkins accentuated her strengths, which are few, but she also hid her weaknesses. She never put Gal Gadot in a position dramatically where her lack of acting talent would be exposed. And so she put most of the heavy acting scenes had to go on Chris Pine, and that just tells us what a great director Patty Jenkins is. My problem with the Gal Gadot casting had nothing to do with Jamie Alexander. Is Jamie Alexander one of the 100 other actresses I thought would have been a good Wonder Woman? Yes, I think she would have been a good Wonder Woman. But there are 100 other actresses I think would have been a good Wonder Woman. Gal Gadot is not one of them. She's just not a strong actress. And you watch every other movie she's in, and she's like, oh my God. And there's a reason why studios haven't been lining up to offer her other movies. But anyway, that's just my opinion. Other people have a different opinion. Nothing wrong with that. But you ask me why I feel that way? That's why I feel that way. Anyway, that will do it for this episode of the John Campea Show, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Listen, don't forget, we've got over 100,000 subscribers now, but we got room for a whole lot more. If you have not subscribed to my channel, take a second, click on that subscribe button. Keep up to date with all the videos that I put up here. A little bit later today, I was going to do this yesterday, but I simply ran out of time because I ended up doing like 3.5 hours worth of Star Wars The Last Jedi spoiler reviews. But a little bit later today, I have a video coming up called 3 Reasons Why Star Wars The Last Jedi will drop 60% or more in its second weekend at the box office, so keep your eye open for that. I also got my Jumanji review is going to be up today, so keep your eyes open for that. And I'm also going to do another video answering those questions I didn't get to on today's show, so keep your eyes open for that as well. Click the thumbs up button, leave a thought or comment in the video description or the video comment section below. Make sure you follow me on social media on Twitter. Simply follow me at John Campea. You can see that right there. That'll do it for me, guys. Thanks so much for joining me. My name's John Campea, and until the next video, bye-bye.